Before we dive in, if you enjoy these first-person zombie apocalypse horror stories, hit like and subscribe to never miss a drop of dread. And let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from tonight? I read everyone, and it's wild seeing how far these tales travel. Now let's get into it. I tore through the woods, lungs burning, boots slipping on the damp earth. The night air was thick. Every breath felt like I was drowning. Behind me, the trees shook with movement. Something fast, something unnatural. I didn't dare look back. I could hear them. The heavy thud of bodies slamming through the undergrowth. The sharp, animalistic snarls. The wet slap of feet against mud. I stumbled over a root and almost went down. Somehow I kept moving. My rifle bounced uselessly on its sling against my back. No time to raise it. No time to fight. Only to run. A gunshot cracked somewhere to my left. Then another closer. Someone else was still alive. Still fighting. I opened my mouth to shout but stopped myself. Noise drew them. Noise was death. Branches whipped my face. My side screamed with every breath. Ahead, through the shadows, I spotted the broken remains of a fence. Beyond it, the faint outline of the outpost. Home. Or what was left of it. The moon slid from behind the clouds. For one terrible second I saw them. Not the shambling dead I had spent years surviving against. No, these things moved like predators. Twisted bodies, muscles coiled too tight. Eyes gleaming with a sick intelligence. They weren't supposed to be like this. The walls, the guns, it was supposed to be safe. We were supposed to be safe. I pushed harder, lungs ready to tear themselves apart, because I knew one thing. If I slowed down for even a second, I would never make it back. Not tonight. 2 days earlier, I stood on the back of a flatbed truck, rifle slung across my chest, watching the road unravel ahead of us. The sun was brutal that afternoon, the kind of heat that cooked the asphalt and made the air dance. We were a convoy of 5 trucks hauling fuel, medicine, and replacement parts to Outpost Epsilon, the strongest outpost left standing in this sector. Or so we thought. The radio silence had started 3 days ago. At first, we figured it was just a busted antenna. Maybe a sandstorm knocked out the repeaters. No one panicked. Epsilon had walls. Epsilon had turrets. Epsilon had men and women who had survived worse. I remember cracking a joke with Carter, the convoy lead. If Epsilon falls, we might as well kiss the whole damn world goodbye. He just laughed and said we would be drinking cold beer behind their walls by nightfall. Back then, optimism was still something we could afford. The further we drove, the quieter it got. No birds, no distant gunfire. Even the infected, which usually lingered at the edges of the roads, were nowhere to be seen. The silence was heavy, unnatural. I kept checking the safety on my rifle. When the gates of Epsilon finally came into view, my stomach twisted into a knot. The massive steel doors, the ones that had held back hordes for years, were wide open. One door dangled off its hinges, groaning softly in the wind. Inside, the outpost was deathly still. Carter called it in, his voice low and tight over the comms. No sentries on the towers, no patrols, no lights. His words hung in the air. Even without orders, the drivers began reaching for their weapons. We knew something was wrong. We knew it deep in our bones. We parked just outside the gate. Everyone dismounted in silence. The truck sat idling behind us, engines humming like nervous animals. 15 of us moved in, weapons up, eyes scanning every shadow. Inside the walls, it looked like the skeleton of a battlefield. Chairs overturned, supply crates shattered, shell casings glittered in the dust. But no bodies, no blood pools, nothing that made sense. It was like the people of Epsilon had simply vanished. We fanned out, sweeping the perimeter. Carter stayed on the comms, coordinating the search. I stuck close to Alvarez and Jordan, the 2 best shots in our crew. We moved through the mess hall first. Tables and benches smashed to pieces. food trays scattered across the floor like they had been dropped mid-meal. Still no sign of a struggle, no drag marks, no bullet holes in the walls. We found a few blood smears, long, thin streaks like someone had been pulled away by force. But no bodies, no signs of gunfights. In the command center, the power was out, monitors shattered, maps torn from the walls. The emergency generator was silent, its control panel ripped open and gutted. It looked deliberate, systematic. We tried accessing the security logs, but the terminals were dead. Hard drives missing. Someone, or something, had gone out of their way to erase what happened here. The deeper we went, the worse the feeling got. A cold sweat broke out under my armor. It felt like the walls were pressing in, like something was watching us. Jordan muttered under his breath, "This place gives me the creeps, man. It ain't right. It's too quiet." I wanted to tell him to shut up, to stay sharp, but I felt it too. The wrongness of it all. When we reached the barracks, we found our first real clue. Scorch marks along the walls and ceilings, as if someone had used incendiaries, but not to fight off a horde. It looked targeted, controlled burns. Carter theorized maybe there was an infection inside the walls. Maybe Epsilon's own people turned on each other. Maybe they tried to contain it. It was a nice theory, made sense, almost comforting even, but it didn't explain the open gates, didn't explain why the sentries never called for help, didn't explain why there weren't more bodies. We pressed on. Sunlight faded into a heavy twilight. The long shadows of the towers stretched across the abandoned streets. The dead city of Epsilon. Our nerves frayed thinner with every step. Finally, Carter ordered a fall back to the trucks. We would camp outside the walls tonight, post extra guards, and figure out a plan at first light. No one argued. No one wanted to spend a second longer inside those broken walls than necessary. As we headed back toward the gate, that was when Alvarez froze. I saw his face drain of color. He pointed upward, toward the catwalks running along the inside of the wall. At first I thought he was just seeing shadows, until the shadow moved. It clung to the underside of the catwalk, twisted and wrong, and it was watching us. For a moment, none of us moved. I could barely breathe. The thing clinging to the underside of the catwalk wasn't human anymore. It looked like it might have been once, but now it was something else entirely. Its limbs were elongated, joints bent wrong, its skin stretched tight over muscles that twitched like coiled springs. It clung to the metal beams effortlessly, head cocked at an unnatural angle as it stared down at us, eyes reflecting just a sliver of dying light. Jordan whispered, "What the hell is that?" Nobody had an answer. Carter raised his rifle slowly. "You see it? Take it down." His voice was steady, but even from where I stood I could see the sweat dripping off his chin. Alvarez was the first to raise his weapon. The crack of his rifle split the silence. The creature shrieked, a sound so high-pitched it made my teeth ache. Then it moved. It dropped from the ceiling like it weighed nothing, hit the ground in a low crouch. In one blurred motion it launched at Alvarez. He didn't even have time to scream. One moment he was standing next to me. The next he was on the ground, thrashing, blood spraying from his throat. Jordan opened fire, full auto. The thing jerked under the impact but kept moving, slamming into him with a sickening crunch. I watched Jordan's body bounce off the side of a supply crate before crumpling like a broken doll. Carter shouted for everyone to fall back. We scrambled, firing wildly as more shapes darted out from the ruins. Not the slow lumbering infected we were used to. These were faster, smarter. Their movements were coordinated like predators driving prey into a trap. I emptied a full magazine into one that came too close. It kept coming until the last few rounds tore through its skull. Only then did it drop. We made it to the open courtyard near the trucks. Another one of those things sprinted out from behind a collapsed guard post. It was on 4 legs at first, running like an animal. Then it stood upright and tackled one of our drivers. The man's screams were cut short with a brutal snap of his neck. Panic tore through our ranks. Carter barked orders, trying to rally us, but discipline broke. Some men bolted for the trucks. Others stood frozen, unloading bullet after bullet into the shadows. I stuck close to Carter. We moved toward the trucks, trying to cover as many people as we could. Another shriek split the air. From the rooftops, more of them poured in. They climbed walls, leapt across gaps, moved too fast for us to track. Carter shoved me behind one of the supply trucks. "Stay low, short controlled bursts. Conserve your ammo," he snapped. I nodded, but deep down I knew it wouldn't matter. We were outnumbered, outmatched, and whatever these things were, they weren't mindless. They hunted with purpose. They herded us like cattle. A scream erupted near the fuel tanker. I turned in time to see two of our men dragged away into the darkness, their boots scraping helplessly across the asphalt, their weapons falling from lifeless hands. We managed to regroup near the command truck. There were 8 of us left, maybe 9. Hard to tell in the chaos. Carter made the call. "We are leaving. Now, mount up, cover each other." No one argued. We moved fast, knowing any hesitation would get us killed. I climbed into the back of a truck, slamming the armored door shut behind me. Others piled in. Carter took the wheel. The engine roared to life. Headlights stabbed through the growing darkness. Just as we pulled away from the courtyard, something slammed onto the roof. The whole truck rocked sideways. I fired blindly upward, rounds punching through the thin metal. Whatever was up there scrambled and shrieked, but it held on. Another shape appeared in front of the windshield. Carter swerved, trying to shake it off. The thing latched onto the hood, snarling and clawing at the glass. I crawled toward the front of the truck, slammed my rifle through the gun port, and fired point blank. The creature's head exploded in a spray of gore. It slipped off the side and disappeared under the wheels. We barreled through the open gate, back onto the cracked highway, away from the silent ruins of Epsilon. But even as we sped off into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't escaped. Not really. I looked back through the rear window. In the moonlight, I saw them. Standing at the gates, watching, waiting. Not chasing, not roaring, just standing there. Like they were letting us go. Or maybe they were following from a distance. Waiting for the right moment to finish the hunt. We drove through the night, engines roaring, nerves fraying with every mile we put between us and Epsilon. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were the growl of the trucks and the occasional clink of spent shell casings rolling across the floor. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept my rifle ready, eyes darting to every shadow on the side of the road. Every twisted tree branch, every broken signpost looked like it might suddenly leap at us. After 2 hours of hard driving, Carter pulled us off the main highway. We found a half-collapsed way station, good visibility, walls intact enough to make a stand if we had to. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best we were going to get. We parked the trucks in a tight circle, pointing the lights outward, set up what defenses we could. Barbed wire, sandbags, anything left over from old military convoys. Then we sat there, weapons in our laps, trying to catch our breath. There were 6 of us left now. Me, Carter, Reed, Thompson, Harris, Vega, all of us battered, bloody, exhausted. Carter gathered us around the back of the command truck. He kept his voice low, like the darkness might be listening. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with. This isn't a normal outbreak. Epsilon didn't fall because of numbers. It fell because we didn't understand what hit it." Nobody argued. Nobody even nodded. We just listened. Reed, our medic, spoke up first. "I saw Alvarez before he went down. That thing moved too fast. Reflexes, like nothing I've ever seen. And the wounds it made, precise. They knew where to hit." He paused, swallowing hard. "These aren't just random mutations. They're evolving, adapting." The idea made my skin crawl. The infected we knew were slow, mindless, driven by hunger and rage, sure, but predictable. You could outrun them, outfight them, not anymore. Carter rubbed a hand over his face. We need intel. We can't go back blind. Harris pointed toward the back of the truck. We managed to grab this before we pulled out. He dragged out a hard case, popped it open. Inside was a battered laptop, half of it patched with duct tape. It was one of Epsilon's data nodes. Someone had ripped it from the command center just before everything went to hell. Vega plugged it into the portable generator. The screen flickered to life. Static, then a login prompt. Carter leaned in, typing quickly. The system was damaged, but some files remained. Logs, reports, encrypted messages. We dug through the data like drowning men grabbing for a rope. Most of it was corrupted. Fragments of patrol reports, snippets of video feeds showing empty streets. Until we found a file labeled Project Knox. It was buried deep, hidden behind layers of encryption. We cracked it, and what we saw made my blood run cold. Weeks before the radio silence, Epsilon had been experimenting with something, trying to develop a countermeasure against the infected, a virus designed to enhance human resilience, boost speed, strength, healing, to turn soldiers into something that could survive a world overrun by the dead. They called it the Knox strain, but something went wrong, horribly wrong. The infected they tested it on didn't just get stronger, they got smarter, faster, more organized. At first Epsilon thought they could contain it. The logs detailed controlled incidents, internal quarantines, all lies. They were losing control from the very start. One entry chilled me to my core. Subjects exhibit pack behavior, communication suspected, tactical decision-making evident. Another line scribbled almost as an afterthought. If the Knox strain breaches quarantine, it will not stop at Epsilon. We sat there, staring at the screen, the sick realization sinking in. Epsilon didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because it created its own executioners. Carter leaned back, face pale. They didn't just let this happen. They made it happen. Outside, the wind howled through the broken windows. I thought of the creature standing at the gates, letting us run, watching, waiting, learning. They weren't random mutations. They were the next step. Predators built in the lab, perfected by our own arrogance. We weren't fighting an outbreak anymore. We were fighting something designed to win. I looked around at the others. The fear in their eyes told me they understood too. There would be no outrunning this, no hiding from it. And worst of all, we had just led them straight to the last places still standing. The generator sputtered and died without warning. The laptop screen went dark. The floodlights blinked out, plunging the way station into blackness. For one heartbeat, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then came the first sound, a metallic scrape, like claws dragging across corrugated steel. Carter shouted, "Light 'em up." We scrambled for flashlights, headlamps, flares, anything. I flicked mine on just in time to see a shape dart across the far edge of the truck ring, low to the ground, too fast, too deliberate. The howling started next, not like the cries of the old infected. This was coordinated, signals, communication. They were surrounding us, driving us inward, herding us like sheep into a slaughter pen. I fired into the darkness. The muzzle flash lit up a hunched figure skittering across the asphalt. I hit its center mass. It barely flinched. Reed was the first to go. One of them dropped onto him from the ruined roof, tore into him before he could scream. Blood sprayed across the sandbags. Reed's body convulsed once, then went still. I turned to fire, but something slammed into me from the side. We crashed into a rusted gas pump. I kicked and clawed, feeling cold, clawed hands scrabbling for my throat. Carter's rifle barked twice. The weight on me jerked, then went limp. He hauled me up. Move, fall back to the trucks. We ran, or tried to. The ground was slick with blood and oil. Figures darted between the vehicles, moving too fast to track. Harris went down next, dragged screaming into the darkness. His flashlight spun wildly, its beam catching flashes of torn flesh in two wide jaws before it winked out. Vega, Thompson, Carter, and I made it to the trucks. We climbed into the command rig, slamming the doors shut, jamming rifles and crowbars through the handles to brace them. Inside it was pitch black except for the emergency lights. Our breaths came fast and shallow. Every thud against the hull made the walls vibrate. Every screech and howl outside set my nerves on fire. "They're hunting us," Vega whispered. "We're not fighting them, we're prey." He was right, and the walls wouldn't hold forever. Carter pointed toward the maintenance hatch in the floor. "Old service tunnels under the highway. If we can get there, we can lose them." It wasn't a good plan, but staying meant dying. I pulled the hatch open. Stale, wet air hit me in the face. It smelled like rust, mildew, and something worse, rot. One by one, we dropped into the darkness. I was the last. As I slid the hatch closed above me, I heard the command rig's door splinter under something massive. A roar echoed in the night, then silence. We moved through the tunnels, flashlights cutting narrow beams through the black. The walls dripped moisture. The floor was slick. Every step echoed too loud, carrying down endless corridors. It didn't take long before we heard them following. Not clumsy footsteps, no shuffling, no growls. They were silent, deliberate, stalking us like wolves in the woods. We picked up the pace. Our boots splashed through shallow puddles, breathing hard, hearts hammering. Then Vega screamed. Something grabbed his leg and yanked him off his feet. He disappeared into a side corridor before any of us could react. We chased after him, rounding a corner, finding only his flashlight, spinning in a slow circle on the wet floor. There was no blood, no body, just gone. Thompson broke then. Panic hit him like a hammer. He bolted down the main tunnel, ignoring our shouts. I caught a glimpse of something dropping from the ceiling ahead of him. A flash of claws. A blur of muscle. Then a wet, snapping sound. Thompson never even had time to scream. Carter grabbed my arm, yanking me toward a maintenance stairwell. "We go up. Surface access. Now." We sprinted for the stairs, clanging up the rusted metal steps 2, 3 at a time. The sounds behind us grew louder. Closer, heavy bodies moving fast. I slammed into the hatch at the top, throwing it open. We tumbled out into the night. The highway stretched out in front of us, broken, silent, empty. Carter yanked the hatch shut behind us, slamming a steel rod through the locking brackets. It would buy us maybe a minute, maybe less. We were standing on the edge of an old freeway overpass. Below us was a wrecked convoy, burned-out cars, crushed buses, a sea of twisted metal under the moonlight. "We run," Carter said. "Stick together, head for the hills." We didn't have time to argue. The hatch behind us buckled inward, dented by something smashing against it with incredible force. We sprinted, feet pounding cracked concrete, the night air cold and sharp in our lungs. Halfway across the overpass, the hatch gave way. They poured out, dozens of them, maybe more. Faster than before, more coordinated. I fired over my shoulder, squeezing off bursts. Carter did the same, but it barely slowed them down. One of them led the distance between us like a wild animal. I ducked. It sailed over me, hit the ground, rolled, came back up running. Carter wasn't as lucky. One caught him by the back of his vest, dragged him off his feet. He fired point blank, blowing the thing's head apart, but 2 more were on him before he could stand. He looked at me, eyes clear, No fear, just acceptance. Go, he shouted. Finish it. I hesitated, fired a few more rounds, but he was already gone, buried under snapping jaws and clawed hands. I ran, heart hammering, vision narrowing to a tunnel. Just me, the broken highway, and the endless night. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Looking back would mean death. The overpass ended ahead. A collapsed section led down into a crumbling ravine choked with debris. I jumped, hit the slope hard, rolled through the wreckage, tearing my arms and legs on twisted metal. Came up coughing, bleeding, but alive. Above me, the creatures lined the broken edge of the highway, dozens of them, watching, silent. They didn't chase, not yet. I staggered into the darkness, into the unknown, knowing they would follow when the time was right. And this time we would not be ready. I stumbled through the wasteland, broken cars, twisted rebar, shattered glass crunching under my boots. Every muscle in my body screamed. Every breath burned like fire, but I kept moving. I had to. Behind me I heard them. Not a stampede, not a chaotic rush. They were pacing me, hurting me again, like wolves pushing a wounded deer. The hills loomed ahead, dark shapes against the night sky. Ruined suburbs sprawled at their base, collapsed houses, burned-out neighborhoods, graveyards of the old world. I pushed toward them, slipping between wrecked fences and dried-up yards. The streets were silent, dead, except for the occasional scuttle of rats. I found an old gas station near the outskirts, walls still standing, doors ripped off, but it had a roof. It had corners I could defend. I stumbled inside, collapsed behind the counter, tore open my last medkit, wrapped my bleeding arm with shaking hands. It wasn't enough, but it would have to do. I checked my gear. 3 magazines left, 1 flare, a broken combat knife. Not much, but maybe enough to buy a little more time. I heard them gathering outside, soft footsteps, a low growl, a hiss of breath through broken teeth. They were waiting, watching, enjoying the hunt. I stood up, forcing my legs to steady. I pulled a flare from my vest, cracked it to life. The red light painted the room in bloody colors. If they wanted me, they would have to come and get me. The first one appeared in the doorway, its body hunched and twitching, eyes glinting with unnatural intelligence. I raised my rifle, put 3 rounds through its skull. It dropped without a sound. Another took its place, then another, and another. I fired until the rifle clicked empty, dropped it, pulled my pistol. They rushed the room, crawling over the counters, smashing through the broken windows, swarming like ants. I fired into them, point blank, faces, chests, legs, anything that moved. Spent shells bounced off the floor. The flare's red light turned everything into a nightmare. One of them tackled me. We crashed through a shelf of rotted canned food. I drove the broken knife into its neck. It shrieked, clawed at my face, then went limp. Another grabbed my leg. I kicked free, smashing its jaw with the butt of the pistol. I was losing ground. Too many, too fast. I threw the flare into a puddle of gasoline leaking from a cracked pump line. The room erupted into flames. The blast threw me across the room. The infected caught fire, screeching, thrashing. But they didn't stop. Burning, they still came, still hunted. I crawled behind the counter again, body screaming, vision blurring. The fire spread fast, the whole station becoming an inferno. Thick black smoke filled my lungs, made my eyes burn. It would kill me soon if they didn't. I slumped against the back wall, pistol resting on my knee. 1 magazine left, maybe 15 shots. The infected circled outside now, waiting for the fire to die. waiting for me to choke, to crawl out, weak, easy. I wasn't going to give them that. I ripped a broken metal pipe from the wreckage, tied what was left of my shirt around one end, poured gas over it, lit it off a burning shelf. A crude torch, a final weapon. I kicked open the back door, staggered into the alley behind the station. There they were, dozens of them, waiting. Their leader stood at the front, taller than the rest, broad-shouldered, covered in scar tissue and burns. It looked at me with cold, calculating eyes, no rage, no hunger, just the calm certainty of a predator at the top of the food chain. I raised the torch in one hand, pistol in the other. "This is it, you bastards," I rasped. "You want me? Come get me." They charged, a tidal wave of mutated flesh and teeth. I fired into the mass. Every shot counted. Every trigger pull bought another second. They closed in, too fast, too many. The leader lunged. I sidestepped, jammed the burning torch into its face. It howled, swiping blindly. I emptied the last rounds of my pistol into its chest. It stumbled, fell. But the others didn't hesitate. They crashed into me, knocking the pistol from my hand, ripping at my arms, my legs. I fought like a cornered animal, swinging the torch, punching, kicking, biting. The flames clung to them, spread across their rotted bodies. But still they clawed for me. I could feel myself slipping, strength draining, vision narrowing to a pinpoint. I thought of Carter, of Vega, of all the ones who didn't make it. I thought of Epsilon, the price we paid for our own mistakes. I wasn't going to die cowering, not tonight. With a final roar, I drove the burning torch into the gas-soaked wreckage behind me. The alley exploded. Fire washed over everything. The creatures, the buildings, me. Pain tore through every nerve. I didn't care. I welcomed it. The last thing I saw was the leader burning, its body collapsing into ash. And then darkness. I woke up choking on ash, air thick like wet cement. My whole body felt like it had been crushed under a mountain. I lay there for a long time, listening, waiting. No snarls, no footsteps, only the crackle of dying fire and the low groan of collapsing metal. When I finally moved, it was like dragging a corpse. Every joint screamed. Every breath rattled in my chest. I pushed myself up, looked around. The gas station was gone. Nothing left but twisted steel and blackened concrete. The alley was scorched earth, charred bodies scattered like broken dolls. They were dead, for real this time. I stumbled forward, boots crunching over glass and bone. Every step sent new waves of pain rolling through me. But I was alive, somehow. I limped through the ruins, heading for the hills. Away from the town, away from the memories. The sun was coming up, weak and cold, like it was afraid to shine on what was left. I looked down at my hands, burned, bloody, but steady. The infection hadn't taken me, not yet. Out there, past the hills, maybe there was another outpost, another place trying to hold on, another last stand waiting to happen. I didn't know, didn't care. All that mattered was moving forward, one step at a time, one more breath, one more mile. Because if I stopped, if I gave up, then everything we fought for at Epsilon would mean nothing. Carter, Vega, all of them. They didn't die so I could rot in a burned-out alley. They died fighting, and so would I. Until my last breath, until the world stopped spinning. I would keep going, no matter what waited out there. I climbed the first hill, heart pounding, lungs burning. The world stretched out before me, blackened fields. Ruined highways, empty towns swallowed by the dead. For a moment I stood there, staring into that endless graveyard, wondering if I was the last one left, wondering if it even mattered anymore. Then I heard it, a sound carried by the wind, faint but unmistakable. A low growl, a snarl twisted with something new, smarter, hungrier. I turned toward it, torch in one hand, broken pistol in the other. A shiver ran down my spine. The war wasn't over. It was only changing, evolving, turning into something worse. The strongholds were falling. The old rules didn't matter anymore. Survival meant becoming just as relentless, just as brutal, just as merciless. The dead had changed, and if I wanted to live, so would I.